everybody, and welcome to Wrestling Academy, a podcast all about wrestling history with no linear timeline or trackable syllabus. So if you're a lifelong fan or you're brand new, this is a podcast for you. I am Samee Junio, your Homecoming King.
And I am your Headmaster Michael. Classic. Samee, how are you doing today? You doing good?
I'm good. I'm full of energy drink and Dayquil, and I'm ready to rock and roll. Michael, how are you doing?
Yeah, we got the Homecoming King just pushing to the absolute limit to entertain you, the fans, and me, the Headmaster. Samee, we're happy you're here. Thank you for battling illness to be here, but you're so into wrestling. We just had to do it.
Couldn't stop. Can't stop myself.
Can't stop, won't stop. As you said, this is Wrestling Academy, and we're on a little bit of a road right now. Like if you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to us and can somehow get to YouTube quickly, we've set a goal for ourselves. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. And when we do so, we're going to reward you by Samee putting me through a table for real. We're really going to do it.
Real.
There are two things that are constantly on my mind. One is the inevitable heat death of the universe. And two is the fact that eventually I'm going to go through a table. And I don't know, those two things existentially freak me out equally.
So please help us out and rush over to YouTube and follow us there so that your mind cannot
help me get rid of this existential dread. Like I just want to stop worrying. I just want it to happen already.
Right. Yeah. Just ease Headmaster Michael's anxieties by subscribing to us on YouTube so that we may finally put him through a table and all of his problems will be solved.
Make a hypothetical into a reality. Take one thing off my goddamn mind.
We are still on the hunt for Ween Kid. To join us on this hunt, check out our website, wrestlingacademy.university, or go to the pinned post on our Instagram and check out that reel. And if you have any information, please reach out to our Ween Kid tip line and leave us a voicemail at 708-669-4512. That's 708-669-4512. And as our hunt for Ween Kid rages on, so continues our thirst for diving into the vast libraries of professional wrestling. Michael, who are we covering this week?
Samee, I'm so glad that you asked me this question because I've been honestly excited to cover this one for a little bit. Today, we're going to be talking about a wrestler over in AEW. So we've been talking a fair amount about WWE. We've gone to some other companies. We've been to New Japan. We've been to TNA. And we've rarely been over to AEW. And I was excited to check in because I don't know if you know this, and I think most wrestling people will agree that right now, AEW, All Elite Wrestling, has been battling some pretty negative press and perception. And I don't know. I just really was getting pretty bogged down by the negativity about all of it. So I just wanted to jump back into a time when everybody agreed that AEW was pretty fun. And so I wanted to hop in and cover a storyline that's just like a pure, fun, kick-ass AEW story. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today when we dive into Hangman Adam Page.
I found myself really falling for Hangman Adam Page. Were you like a big fan of him before we dove into this research?
I've been a fan ever since I saw this one really specific match live. So this was back in we talked about PWG, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, which was like an independent promotion in California that a lot of the guys from AEW cut their teeth and got their start at. And so a lot of the guys that we're going to be talking about were pretty big fixtures for PWG. And so I remember seeing a show where it was Hangman Adam Page and Keith Lee, and they had a match together. And this was like right when Keith Lee was the champion of PWG. So he was the top guy. And then we've got this new upstart Hangman Adam Page rolling into town. Hangman came out and he had only applied half of his self-tanner. So truly like a line on the front half of his body was like perfectly cut, perfectly tan. But as soon as he turned around, he was just white as a ghost. And it was like a whole thing. Like they were going to get into it, but as soon as the audience noticed, we're all like, wait, what? Whoa, you're back. Everyone's like chanting, like, what's with your back? Like everybody's like, cannot stop yelling about Hangman Adam Page's back. And then Keith Lee's like, what? And then he sees Page turn around, he sees the thing, and he just starts laughing his ass off. And then like Hangman just starts laughing too. And there's like a full 3-minute laugh break at the beginning of the match where like he's like, all right, cool. And then Keith tries to shake it off, and then he just starts laughing again. And he's like, what the hell? And then they go on to have an incredible match. And so I think just watching that happen and be like, okay, that was like a true blooper that happened. And Page was so cool about it and so funny that I was like, man, what a guy. And he's so good in the ring too. I love this guy. So I've been a fan of his for years and years now.
He's one of those wrestlers where when you're watching it, it just feels good.
There was a certain style of independent wrestling in the mid to like 2015 to 2020 that was super popular, super prevalent, and it was largely inspired by guys like Kenny Omega and guys like the Young Bucks. And it was a very acrobatic style where it was a lot of like flips and hard hits, but I feel like Hangman has the size to be able to do some of those bigger slams that like a heavyweight, or that would maybe be more attributable to that WWE style, like a big guy like Triple H or something like that, where it's a lot of like beefy slams and hard hits and stuff like that. So I really feel like he's kind of the perfect blend between that independent style that people really liked, that was a lot more acrobatic, because he does a lot of flips and slams, but then he also, I think, has the size and has the heft to really make you believe those like bigger slams and those bigger moves. That's how I've always viewed him. He's kind of the perfect blend between the independent style and then the WWE promotional style, I think.
All right, let's get into his bio. So, shockingly, Hangman Adam Page is not his real name. It is Stephen Woltz.
I don't think we can name the episode this, but it's just like, look, Mama didn't raise no Hangman, you know what I mean? She raised a Steven. She didn't raise.
I would love it, actually. Keep this in. So Stephen Woltz kind of to me feels already like a good wrestling name. If you were named Stephen Woltz, would you change it?
Yeah, absolutely I would.
Okay, cool.
I think Adam Page, great name. Stephen Woltz, not the biggest fan of it. And it just feels, doesn't Stephen Woltz just sound like an insurance salesman? That's not who I want to root for to be world champ. That's not who I want to be my bro. Like, I look at it like this. Who would you rather have as your best man? Stephen Woltz or the Hangman Adam Page?
Yeah, Stephen Woltz kind of sounds like the third wheel of Emporium, even though there's 3 of them.
It really does feel like, look, I've known Steven for a long time, but I feel like he's always trying to bang my girlfriend. He's always just around. Whereas, look, I'm worried because my girlfriend won't stop hanging out with the Hangman Adam Page. You know what I mean? Like 2 different fears arise, and one seems one seems smarmy and one seems cool as hell.
Right on. Steven kind of figured this out himself. So he debuted as Adam Page and stayed as Adam Page. He debuts in 2008 at Carolina Wrestling Federation Mid-Atlantic, or CWF Mid-Atlantic, the Premier Wrestling Experience, PWX. And by 2011, he was at Ring of Honor. It's at Ring of Honor where Adam meets the Young Bucks and joins the Bullet Club. We mentioned this faction, obviously, in our Kenny Omega and Okada episode, as well as our Lucha Bros episode. In 2016, Adam earns his Hangman moniker by literally hanging Chris Sabin. Now, you were watching wrestling in 2016, Michael. Did you see this?
I'll be completely honest with you, Samee. I only ever thought it was a cool name. I didn't know he literally hung somebody.
He literally hangman noosed somebody for realsies.
There's only 2 people I've ever heard of doing something like this. Well, 3 actually. One was when The Undertaker hung the Big Boss Man from a Hell in a Cell. 2 was the Hangman Adam Page hanging Chris Sabin, which is crazy. And then 3 is the current AEW champion, Swerve Strickland, hung Adam Page with a metal chain.
Oh my God.
You got to be a certain kind of wrestler to pull something like that off, I think.
That's true. And the fact that 2 out of the 3 instances that you're aware of involve Hangman Adam Page, I don't want to be a victim blamer, but
it's in the name, and it seems to happen to you a lot. So it's like, do you think? Yeah, I guess that's the real question. Do you think Hangman Adam Page would find himself in that situation as much if he was just Hangman, the chill guy to hang out with? You know what I
mean? I don't know. Let's ask him.
The chill hang Adam Page.
Right. Okay, so Adam and the Young Bucks start running as a threesome called the Hung Bucks, which I really appreciated. Hangman Adam Page headed over to New Japan in 2016 and debuted at AEW in 2019.
So, as Samee said, Adam Page joins AEW in 2019, but I did want to spend a little bit of time here delving into the history of like All Elite Wrestling. What is it? Where did it come from? We've touched on it a little bit before, but I think this is like a nice time to have like a dedicated chunk. So to get into what All Elite Wrestling is, let's talk about who are the Elite? What is the Elite? To get into what the Elite is, we need to go back to the group Samee was just talking about, the Bullet Club. So the Bullet Club was like a popular faction in New Japan Pro Wrestling that was sort of a countercultural, anti-authority, heel group, bad guy group of people that was kind of like the NWO or DX. They were this gang of foreign wrestlers who were invading New Japan and sort of breaking the rules and being disrespectful.
I have a question. If NWO, the Bullet Club, and DX somehow met up in a 3-way match, all at the peak of their abilities, who do you think would win?
The Bullet Club.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because look, I like all these other guys, but just pure wrestling, NWO has 0 Shawn Michaels. DX has 1 Shawn Michaels. The Bullet Club has like 7 Shawn Michaelses in it, basically. I'm a huge fan, but you can only, if your group has 1, if it's 1 Shawn Michaels versus 7 Shawn Michaels, 7 is going to win every time, unfortunately.
Fair. I like that math.
Within the Bullet Club, and we covered this in our New Japan episode where we talked about the feud between Kenny Omega and Okada. So a wrestler named Kenny Omega becomes the leader of the Bullet Club, and he is so popular across the entire world that he is able to get eyes on New Japan, eyes on the Bullet Club who want to see him specifically. And then 2 other members of the Bullet Club is this tag team, the Young Bucks. And at that time, they were sort of like the Kenny Omega of tag team wrestling, where everybody loved the Young Bucks and would go out of their way just to see these guys wrestle. And here's the thing, Samee. Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, they were all friends in real life. And so they were basically like, hey, we're all in the Bullet Club, and everybody is talking about how cool it is. But when they say it's cool, they kind of are only talking about us. And New Japan owns the rights to all this stuff. So New Japan is making so much money off of us, and there's kind of nothing we can do about it. And so they started their own subgroup called the Elite. And the Elite was basically just the 3 of them. And they owned the rights to it, and then they kind of did their own thing. And so the Elite was part of the Bullet Club, but it was also very much its own thing with its own independent goals that was able to transcend New Japan Pro Wrestling, was able to go all over the place, was able to sell t-shirts. And then another thing that they started doing, granted, this is in 2015. So they also thought it would be a really good idea to start their own vlog channel where they show the behind the scenes life of being a wrestler, what it's like to tour, what it's like to put together. They would be backstage during big matches and big events. So when Kenny Omega went after the New Japan heavyweight title, they had a vlog where they were backstage just goofing around and talking to Kenny Omega about what it was like. And then they would also do, I don't know if you ever had this experience of being in high school and then just goofing around with your friends with a camcorder and doing little bits and sketches.
100%.
So the Elite would do that too, but it would be with insanely popular independent wrestlers that everybody liked and knew a lot about. So you would see Cody Rhodes, you would see Adam Page, you would see the Young Bucks, you would see Kenny Omega all doing just goofy high school skits with a camera, and then also real travel vlogs where they were talking about what it was like to be a wrestler. And they called it Being the Elite, and it was super popular. Being the elite in general get super popular to the point where they start adding in new members of just friends of theirs, people they get along with, people who have the same vision as them. And they notably add Cody Rhodes, and they notably add Hangman Adam Page, among many others. But these are some of the most prominent ones for the story that we're about to get into. So the Elite, they're doing their thing. They're all over the indies. And at this stretch of time, around 2015, there's only so many options that you have when you're this popular of a wrestler. They were all basically like, look, we could go to the WWE, but creatively, we can only go so far because we're entering into a system where, like, the old creative team, things are drastically different now. But at the time, it really wasn't cool. The WWE really wasn't cool. And you would see time and again your favorite wrestlers be super popular, go to WWE, and would just be like mishandled, and then nobody would like them. And then, they would just sort of disappear from wrestling. And that happened. And so you could see the Elite being like, look, we're super popular. People are doing whatever, like going out of their way to see us. New Japan is building their American presence off of how popular we are. Like, almost as a joke or a dare, they were like, what if we do our own independent event inside of a stadium? And so they do it in Chicago, and the event sells out in 30 minutes. So these guys are so popular off of their own reputations, they're able to sell out a stadium 30 minutes. People are there just to see them. And the event is called All In because they're going all in on this idea of themselves. So they do it. The event, super popular. Everyone's super excited. I personally went to it. It was so much fun. I had a great time. And it's there that they meet the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, whose dad is also a billionaire, who is also a huge wrestling fan. His name is Tony Khan. And they get working together and they decide, like, hey, what if we just made this into like its own thing? So they didn't really have any options except for, hey, let's see what happens if we just literally start our own company. What are the limits there? And then that is the birth of All Elite Wrestling as we know it.
That's wild. That's wild.
Pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
And this all happened less than 10 years ago. Like, this is how how crazy, like, it's an entity that we all talk about now, and people have justifiable criticisms about how things are going. But it's like, I think sometimes you really just got to keep in mind, All Elite Wrestling as a company has not been around a super long time. And it's funny, by the time we get to the end of the story we're talking about, I was like, oh my God, all of that stuff just happened. So we are in very recent history when we talk about this story. All Elite Wrestling as an institution starts, and we are now at the ground. We are the ground floor. So a common thing that happens, I mean, we've talked about it in our Lucha Bros episode, a big hurdle that every beginning company has is, how do you elect your champions? How do you start it? And so that is literally where this story starts. We go to August 31st, 2019, at an event called All Out, which is sort of the spiritual successor to the independent version, All In, that they did not too long ago. But they run it back. They do All Out. And we go to the main event, where it's a singles match to determine the inaugural AEW World Champion. And the match is between Chris Jericho. He's a 20-plus year wrestling veteran. He's wrestled in every single company. He's done everything. He's won everything. And he's facing this relative newcomer, Hangman Adam Page.
I do believe that the announcers during the match called out their age difference, with Hangman Adam Page coming in at 28 and Chris Jericho coming in at a youthful 48.
I hope to have a body that looks that weird when I'm 50. Like, I would be so grateful if my body looked like Chris Jericho's at 50. Because I see some. Look, here's the thing. I see
have a body that
sometimes.
looks that weird.
Here's the thing. Here's truly the thing. I see so many people get all over leathery skinned older wrestlers, and I'm like,
that's me.
I'm like, bitch, I would kill for that physique right now. Like, I don't have that. I would love to have what they have. That weird old man, like I would kill for that body right now. That's where I'm at. That's what I want. I'm going to flash Rey Mysterio's body on the screen, right? I want that. Like, I'm half his age, and I want that physique right now. I want that.
I mean, I heard on a podcast that Rey Mysterio is full of stem cells, so maybe that's a key, Michael. Just get some stem cells.
If we get 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, I am going to look into stem cells and get a Rey Mysterio body. The road to my Rey Mysterio body begins today.
The road starts at 2K, where you will just Google stem cells.
Yeah,
and leave it at that.
I'll crack open Google and I'll see what's up. I'm gonna get some answers, and I'll pass it along to you. Do I need to run or work out? We'll find out.
No, not at all.
We won't know until we get to 2K, Samee.
Okay, let's find out some more about All Out, Michael.
So we're at All Out. We're in the main event. We're determining who the first ever champion will be. And I really feel like this is a kind of a defining moment for AEW and their future, because what we're basically deciding is, what kind of company is this going to be? Are we going to be the company that goes the safe route and puts the title on the 20 plus year veteran, the person who has the name recognition that would bring in a lot of fans? Or are we going to truly forge our own path and go in a bold new direction where we put the champion on somebody who doesn't have nearly the same reputation or prestige, but a comparable amount of skill? I think Hangman Adam Page is an incredible wrestler. I thought this was a really good match, and I think it really showed how good Hangman Adam Page was. But Samee, how did you feel watching this match?
This is the first time I'm watching Hangman Adam Page do anything. And before the match starts, obviously, we get a video package, and he rips stitches out from his forehead. And I think I was in love in that moment. And then they cut to his entrance, and he's riding in on a horse, and he's wearing assless chaps to wrestle. I just fell deeper and deeper in love with this guy. And then, in stark contrast, we have Chris Jericho. He's in his Painmaker era. He's got long, pokey studs on his leather jacket. And I think the most painful thing about Chris Jericho in this moment is his fedora.
I remember when he was debuting the Painmaker character, and it was like, hey, man, what are we doing? Like, what is this?
Yeah, it's not great. I feel like throughout the years, Chris Jericho's gimmicks he's just switching a letter in something. So Y2J was a gimmick, and then, the Painmaker was following the Rainmaker. And so I hope that Chris Jericho gets a little bit more creative or retires. That'd be great too.
I guess this would be the perfect time to ask you. So you didn't really ever have a ton of experience with Hangman Adam Page prior to this. So we're hopping into one of the biggest matches of his career, and that's going to be your introduction to him. How did you find, I mean, it seemed like the Cowboy entrance, the tough guy ripping out stitches, that seemed like it all really worked for you. But inside of the match, how did his athletic skills strike you?
Well, I mean, we'll get a little bit deeper into this, but he's kind of losing the match in the beginning. But I think the moment that showcased his abilities and let me know that I'm watching somebody that I will actually be a fan of. So Jericho is doing this thing called the Lion Tamer, which is basically a vertical Boston crab, and he's continuing to try and just snatch Hangman into this. But at one point, he's trying to get Hangman into this Lion Tamer again. By that time, he has scouted the move. So to get Chris Jericho to let him go, he corkscrews so hard that Jericho loses his grip and flies out of the ring. And it was at that moment that I'm like, I'm watching greatness right now.
I just want to give a shout out. The Lion Tamer used to be called the Walls of Jericho. And when I was in the second grade, what we all used to do at recess was put each other in the walls of Jericho. I don't know about other people and the wrestling moves they would do on their friends on the playground, but it was just sort of, for me, the walls of Jericho was just sort of the easiest entrance into being able to reliably do wrestling moves on your friend. I mean, I gotta say, the first move my friend Reggie ever put me in, he was just like, oh, hey, do you know what the walls of Jericho are? And I was like, no, tell me more. He put me in the walls of Jericho and my life was forever changed.
Again, I'll say this again. That's probably why you have back problems now, Michael. But yeah, Hangman is an incredible wrestler. Unfortunately for this match, what we have, the story that they're telling is Jericho's a bad boy. So he's falling at the hands of a madman, a dastardly man. Jericho is, just throwing him into barricades and doing all this nasty stuff that is honestly uncalled for in a wrestling match. No matter what Hangman threw at Chris Jericho, Chris was just ready with a counter or had everything just scouted so that Hangman Adam Page never really had the upper hand until he does this move called the discus elbow strike, which is basically just a spinning elbow, and he gets Chris Jericho above the eye and skin splits, and I feel like that really changes the momentum of the match. So Jericho ends up just bleeding all over the place and blinded by his own blood, and it truly is an obscene amount of blood that comes out of his forehead.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly.
I also am seeing, I'm seeing Adam Page do his signature moves for the first time. The Deadeye seems so dangerous. Is the Deadeye a different word for, or a different name for something that's happened that already exists, or is this a new fucking thing? Because it's ridiculous.
I've never really, I'm sure it has another name, but I've never seen anything really like it. So I think the easiest way to describe it would be, so there's the tombstone pile driver, right? Where I think the only way I can say it appropriately is you force your opponent into a standing 69 and then you drop to your knees and you slam their head on the ground. That's a pile driver. The Deadeye is like the exact reverse. And so it's like,
the literal exact reverse.
Yeah. So instead of sending them front ways and hugging them, you just send them over your back and then you just no look drop down. So it's like you have no idea how close their head is to hitting the mat. But I think to make things even worse, your face is just right in his butt while it's happening. And so you're like,
right,
I'm hurting my head and my head is in his butt. Like, what are we doing here?
That's wild. And his other signature move is a buckshot lariat, where he starts from outside of the ring, uses the ropes as momentum to flip himself over, and just nails somebody with a clothesline / lariat.
So at the end of the day, Chris Jericho is able to beat Hangman Adam Page, and he becomes the first ever AEW World Champion. And I think a lot of people were, frankly, disappointed with this because I think it makes good business sense, right? Chris Jericho at the time was one of your broadest mainstream wrestlers. Like, people who are casually into wrestling would be like, oh, I remember Chris Jericho from when I was a kid. He's at AEW. Let me go check it out. And so having him around and him as your champion is the safe bet. But I think a lot of people were fans of AEW because they thought that maybe they were going to be doing something different. And they wanted Hangman Adam Page to be the one to hold it, because it's like, oh, that's a bold statement about what the mission of this company is. But in the storyline, I think the reason I wanted to start this story here is because this loss is, I think, the key to understanding Adam Page from here on out. This loss starts eating away at him. And it's like he's so clearly disappointed and he's so clearly troubled by what happens. And he's not alone. All of the elite ever since the company started. Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, they've all been on pretty significant losing streaks. And you can see that the Young Bucks seem like, hey, we're all hitting a rough patch right now, but I think if we stick together, we're going to be able to get out of this. And I think you can see Adam Page goes a completely different direction. I think he feels a tremendous amount of guilt and shame for losing this match, for losing this opportunity. And let's be honest, we said Chris Jericho, he was cheating a lot during the match. And if the Young Bucks had maybe been out at ringside with him, maybe they would have been able to like help him overcome the cheating that was happening. And so I think on some level, a seed of resentment gets planted here. And Adam Page really you can see that like he really starts distrusting the Young Bucks, and there's a lot of resentment and animosity that starts building. That goes all the way to, in one of these behind the scenes vlogs, you see Hangman Adam Page confront them and be like, hey guys, I think I need to take a step back from being in the Elite. I think I need to just go my own direction. I don't know if this works for me anymore. And it was like, normally like a goofy behind the scenes thing. Now they're having this dramatic beat where Adam Page is like, I don't know if I could be friends with you guys anymore.
Jesus.
And it's pretty brutal. And so it's like, I think it's like, there's just weirdness and there's animosity. You can tell that the Young Bucks are completely blindsided by this and they don't know what to do. And so it's like, you think that like, okay, Adam Page is going his own direction, but he really, really, really starts going in a negative direction where he's got this gimmick that he does when he comes to the ring where he'll go out into the crowd and members of the audience will like hand him their beer and then he'll just like fully down the beer and everybody will like cheer that, this wrestler, he's like chugging beers on the way, Sandman style, chugging beers on the way to the crowd. And so everybody's like loving this partying aspect to Adam Page, but he's also still losing. And so I think there comes a point where it goes from being lighthearted, celebratory partying to being like, I think this character is self-medicating when he's on his way to the ring and he's in a really negative headspace and he's losing a lot. And so by the time we get to October 16th, 2019, Hangman Adam Page is in a very dark place. Like, I think you can agree, him walking in to All Out, he had some pride and some swagger, but he seems to just have this dark cloud hanging over his head. And so what they decide to do is Adam Page, he's having some issues with a wrestler named Pac. And then Kenny Omega, who's a member of the Elite, is having some issues with Jon Moxley. And so they put Kenny Omega and Adam Page together in a tag team to see if maybe they can like work together and work it out. And it's an odd pairing because they have that history. They were all in the Elite together, but Hangman Adam Page likes to party, is a pretty dark dude. Whereas I think Kenny Omega at this time is presented as a pretty silly, straight-laced, straight edge guy who just likes video games, but they're both really good wrestlers. And so I think you can see when they team up for this first time that they have a spark to this team where it's sort of an odd couple, but they work together because they're both so good. They ultimately lose this first encounter, but I think the idea that these two working together as a tag team really takes hold. And I think people really like this unorthodox partnership. How did the odd couple vibe of this tag team strike you?
I mean, I was just going to say odd couple vibe. It just kind of felt like they were like cousins, and the bridge that connected them were the Young Bucks, but they weren't hanging out with the Young Bucks at the time, or in the ring anyway. So it's like, oh yeah, we get along, but there's not really a connection.
It's kind of like one of those 3-person friend groups where the two of the friends are just kind of better friends with the middle friend. And so when that friend goes away, it's like, oh, hey, yeah, I guess we could go to lunch still, or yeah.
It's like we all have the same interests, but I am definitely not as close to you as I am the other person, so it feels like we're strangers.
Yeah, and that is the vibe I also got, where it is like, yeah, it really feels like these two are complete strangers who don't really have anything, don't have much in common besides they were in the Elite and they're good wrestlers.
Which is like fine. I also had a chuckle, and I don't know if we'll talk about it here or not, but in one of the promos about Hangman and Kenny, there is a shot of Kenny drinking milk while Hangman Adam Page drinks a beer, and I thought that was just so funny.
Yeah, so even down to their partying styles are different. Like everything about these two is different, and they also don't really seem like they get along, but there is an element of, like I said, a lot of the elite was on a losing streak at the time. Kenny was no exception. He was losing a tremendous amount at this time. And so I think there was an element of he was feeling that same sort of pressure. And I think instead of being consumed by it, he was doing everything in his power to push it away. And so I really think you were seeing Hangman Adam Page being completely consumed by this losing streak. And then you see another person really trying to like muscle his way through it and be like, I'm a professional. This isn't happening. There is no such thing as being a losing. So it's like, it made him just wound super tight. As they started to work together, I think their chemistry got better and better and better. And so, you know, this tag team starts in October. And by the time we get to January 21st, 2020, on the Chris Jericho Rock and Wrestling Rager at Sea, the tag team of Kenny Omega and Adam Page fight the champions, SoCal Uncensored, who I brought up because they got your boy Frankie Kazarian in it, and Scorpio Sky. Kenny and Adam Page win the AEW tag team titles.
It must be so powerful to win titles on a cruise ship.
Yeah, it was very weird. I mean, I remember being just a fan of wrestling. And so we're in the early days of AEW. So everything is new. We don't know what's going on. And I just remember I was listening to the Chris Jericho podcast, and he mentioned, he's like, one thing that's been on my bucket list that I've always wanted to do is have a wrestling event on a cruise ship. And I would have like wrestling and concerts and all this kind of stuff. And then truly like a year later, he was like, and by the way, I'm doing the Chris Jericho Rock and Wrestling Rager at Sea. And you're like, oh, he really did it. He really is doing it. And so
that's wild.
He was able to, I mean, because he was in AEW, he was able to get a lot of the AEW talent. And because he was in a band, he was able to get other bands to be in it. I'm not really a cruise guy, but, you know, maybe if you're a cruise guy, maybe you would love it. But every time I've seen footage of it, it really felt like MTV Spring Break. And so you would just see, it's a lot of people wrestling by pools, you know?
Which is so funny. So one thing that I really loved is that throughout the research of this and watching all of these matches is that it seems like the graphics team was like taking jabs at Hangman. And the first one that I noticed was at this Rock and Wrestling Rager at Sea, where during Hangman's walk-in, at the very top of his lower third, it says, was hoping this would be a booze cruise. So above his name, Hangman Adam Page, it says, was hoping this would be a booze cruise, which I thought was really funny. And it really harkened back to our backstage production days where we had some fun with the performers. It felt like something we would do.
And there's a pretty infamous, speaking of these graphics, there's a pretty infamous, it became a meme of Hangman Adam Page. So like on an early episode of Dynamite, they're interviewing him at the desk and he just sort of turns around because he doesn't in character, he doesn't realize he's supposed to be on camera yet, but he's fully holding like a glass of whiskey. And so there's like a, and then the graphic says, Hangman Adam Page has been drinking. And so it's just him like kind of buzzed on a live microphone. And that became a defining characteristic of the fun party boy aspect of Hangman Adam Page. But I really feel like once this losing streak started, it really started to morph into being like, oh, this isn't like cute partying.
This is dark.
Yeah, this is getting dark. And
got you.
And the anger sort of seems like it's consuming him. And I really also feel like that's part of the dynamic of the tag team between him and Kenny Omega. So, I mean, they're getting wins, they're doing it, but it really does seem like their vibe is that Adam Page kind of wants to blaze ahead, kind of wants to do everything on his own. And Kenny will really try to come in and really try to coach him and mentor him and just keep everything clean and tidy and on track, honestly, at the expense of himself sometimes. And I think there's a tremendous amount of internal resentment that's starting 100%. To build within Kenny Omega that he really, because I think he's dealing with his own issues, but he has to push all his issues down to deal with somebody else's issues. But they're getting wins, so why make any changes if you're succeeding? You know, it's not healthy, but I could see that being the logic that somebody like Kenny Omega at this time would be using. And so when they win the tag team titles, the Young Bucks come out to celebrate with Hangman Adam Page. It doesn't seem like a let's let bygones be bygones thing. It really seems like he's mad that they're around. Like he still really feels that resentment towards them. And so it's like, yeah, I think the Young Bucks were basically like, hey, congratulations. Maybe this is a way we can all start to rebuild. And Adam Page was basically like, no, I need you guys to fuck off. Like, we're not friends and we did this. And in fact, we won the tag team titles before you guys did. So like you guys are losers, not us. And so you can now start to see that the Young Bucks are, you know, I think at first it was playful where they're like, hey, you know, we're so happy for you guys, but you got the tag titles and we won them. But I think Hangman wants to force the issue and be like, oh, we're not like, this is not a playful rivalry. This is real. Like, we're better than you guys and you guys are losers and we like earned this. And there's like a real darkness and a real resentment. Like the tension really starts to build. And so they win the tag team championships in January. And then in February, we're going up to an event called Revolution where Kenny and Adam Page are going to fight the Young Bucks for the AEW Tag Team Champions. So it's just like all this friendship and history and tension is going to collide here for the biggest prize in this division. And beforehand, like going into the event, they had like a sit down interview where they just had all four members. So they had Kenny and Hangman and they had the Young Bucks there. And Samee, how did you find this interview segment?
It was so uncomfortable. The Young Bucks were not making eye contact at all with anybody. JR's in the middle. He calls out Hangman Adam Page is like, hey, you look really uncomfortable. And Hangman's like, yeah, I do. This sucks.
Yeah, and I also you can tell that it felt like everybody was trying to keep it professional during this segment, except for Adam Page. And Adam Page is like, I'm going to just kind of say whatever I want here. And then you can really see the Young Bucks try to be like, you know, like we respect these guys so much and we do all this, that, and the other thing. And then Adam Page is really not trying to give that same respect back. And then you can kind of see Kenny caught in the middle between, you know, because like Adam Page, he'll take a jab at the Young Bucks and the Young Bucks will start to get pissed off. And then you'll have Kenny try to come in and like smooth it out and make sure everybody, you know, like, this is my partner, but these are my friends. And, you know, like at the end of the day, we're all just competing because we want to be the best, you know, like really trying to keep everything neat and tidy. And then I think when Adam Page straight up brings up that like we won these belts before you did, the Young Bucks snap and they're like, you were fucking nothing before we found you. And then it's like, oh, there it is. There's the real resentment where it's like, I don't think Adam Page was fully wrong about this resentment because you can see there was an element of the Young Bucks thinking that they were better than Adam Page in this instant and being like, we made you when we found you. You were a nobody in Ring of Honor. Yeah, you were a jobber, which is somebody who
just loses.
Yeah, you're basically brought in to lose to a more established talent so that the established talent looks good. And so you're more or less doing your job and your job is to lose. And so it's like a disrespectful thing that insider lingo that wrestlers use. And so the Young Bucks are basically like, yeah, you were a nobody and then we made you who you are. And now you're just disrespecting us like this. Suffice it to say, stuff is tense. And they go on to have this like tag match at Revolution, February 29th, 2020. And this match is unbelievable. It is, I think a lot of people were talking about like, oh, at the year that this happened, this was like one of the top matches of the year. And this was like a year when AEW was having consistently banger match after banger match. Like this match was chef's kiss. So much fun. If you have time, I would absolutely recommend you watch February 29th, the Revolution, February 29th, 2020, the tag team championship match between Kenny Omega and Adam Page versus the Young Bucks. So incredible. And then it's also notable on this event that Jon Moxley, who's debuting from WWE. So again, AEW at this time is so popular that people want to leave the WWE and wrestle here at AEW. So you have Jon Moxley, who was Dean Ambrose in the WWE. And now he's here as Jon Moxley. He defeats Chris Jericho, becomes the AEW World Champion. And I think the result, the Kenny and Adam Page versus Young Bucks match, the Kenny and Adam Page retain. They win. And I think it really helps alleviate some of the tension between the Elite, the members of the Elite. And it ends with that. It starts with them. They're able to sort of coexist a little bit. They're still not friendly, but they're able to team up when they need to. And it seems like things aren't great, but things are workable. And it seems like maybe they're going to start to get back to where they used to be when they were the Elite that everybody cared about. And that is until a certain team called FTR enters the picture.
Oh my.
So to get into who FTR is, this one's a little bit complicated, but I'm going to do my best to explain. So FTR is a tag team that started in the WWE. So a completely different rival company. And when they were in the WWE, they were called the Revival. And the Revival had a meta rivalry with the Young Bucks. So the Young Bucks were in New Japan and the independent scene. The Revival was in WWE. And they were rivals with each other, but they could never acknowledge it because they worked for rival companies. So they would do everything in their power to take little pot shots at each other because both teams were regarded as the best tag team of their generation. So everyone was like, oh, we've got two of the best tag teams. It would be such an amazing dream match to have these two teams be able to fight each other. And fans of tag team wrestling, fans of the Rival, fans of the Young Bucks really wanted it to happen, but it couldn't happen because they were in rival companies under different contracts. The Young Bucks started this catchphrase in their behind the scenes vlog channel. I believe it was Cody Rhodes, honestly, where the camera would basically zoom in on somebody, usually Cody Rhodes, and he would just whisper directly to camera, "Fuck the Revival." And as the Young Bucks, the Elite, got more popular, the catchphrase "fuck the Revival" became super popular to the point where people would see them out and would just start chanting, "Fuck the Revival, fuck the and so everybody was super, like, everybody was taking it too far. And I think there was one event that I saw where they were at this huge like outdoor thing. Everybody's chanting "fuck the Revival," and I think you see Kenny Omega being like, "Okay, hey, we appreciate the enthusiasm, but there are literally children here. So what if from now on, instead of saying that, we say FTR? How about that?" And from then on, it's the catchphrase had always been FTR. So the Revival, they're in WWE until 2020. They get released from their contract and they jump over to AEW, meaning that they are now able to escalate this rivalry between the Revival and the Young Bucks. And so the Revival start going by FTR. So they're basically like, oh, you used this as a thing against it? We're now going to use it against you. So when FTR comes into AEW, they have their sights set squarely on the Young Bucks, but they don't go after them directly. And in fact, they take a little bit of a scenic route on them for some storyline revenge on these guys. And the way they do that, Samee, is they start cozying up and getting real buddy with Hangman Adam Page. So it starts off really subtly. You see them signing their contract, and then Adam Page is just hanging out with them, and they're all drinking beers. And it just seems like, oh, Adam Page is hanging out with the Young Bucks' biggest rivals, people who absolutely want nothing more than the destruction of the Young Bucks. As the weeks go on, you're just seeing Hangman Adam Page hanging out with FTR a lot. It's clearly getting under the Young Bucks' skin. And it all comes to a head on the August 27th, 2020 edition of AEW Dynamite. There is going to be a gauntlet match to determine the number one contenders for Kenny Omega and Adam Page's AEW championship belts. And so it's going to be at the event All Out. And so that name, Samee, should be significant because All Out was the big event that started this whole story where Adam Page fought Chris Jericho and lost. And so this is a big anniversary coming up for Adam Page. So the gauntlet match is as such. Two teams start, and then one team loses, a new team enters. So it'll be the winner of that immediately goes into another one. like whoever wins that, a new opponent immediately comes in. And so to become the number one contender, you ostensibly have to beat 3 other tag teams at once, back to back to back to back to back. So the entrants in this gauntlet are the Natural Nightmares, which is Cody Rhodes and Dustin Rhodes. Then you have the Young Bucks. You have a team called the Best Friends. And then you have a team of FTR.
Before this match, the relationship between FTR and Hangman Adam Page they've really tightened it up. They have found their little injured baby deer of the herd, and they have really sunk their claws into Hangman Adam Page. And before this gauntlet match, they approach Hangman and they're like, "Hey, dude, the Young Bucks cannot win this gauntlet match." And Hangman has to absorbs that info, and reluctantly Hangman Adam Page interferes with the match and holds one of the Young Bucks' ankles as they go in for a finisher, and FTR ends up winning the entire thing.
Basically, Adam Page sabotages the Young Bucks, and they get taken out in the gauntlet, and then FTR is able to like pick up the opportunity. And so going into All Out, it's going to be Kenny and Hangman versus FTR for the AEW World Tag Team Championship belts.
In between August and September, FTR finally shows their cards, and Hangman really takes this betrayal pretty hard because, you know, his whole issue between Kenny and the Young Bucks one of the issues is feeling that he doesn't belong and he's unwanted and he's just super insecure. And so when FTR came in, he felt like he was part of a group, and he, you know, felt seen and felt like he belonged somewhere. And it turns out that it was a long con. And so by September 5th, 2020, All Out, FTR has shown their cards, and he knows the betrayal is on the table now.
Yeah, they basically reveal that they never cared about Adam Page. They just wanted those belts. And so it's like, they were using him in this chess game against the Young Bucks. And they were like playing into his insecurity and his paranoia. And this was all just a huge manipulation. Like they didn't care about him at all. And so when Adam Page sabotages the Young Bucks are like, hey man, you're officially out of the elite. Like we're nothing to each other anymore. So he not only loses these new allies reveal that like, hey man, this is all a trick. We fucking got your ass. You suck. His old friends are basically like, we want nothing to do with you, man. And so all he has left is Kenny Omega, his tag team partner, and the AEW Tag Championship. So we roll into this match, and man, Hangman Adam Page has the biggest chip on his shoulder when he rolls into this. He's so clearly distracted. He's so clearly angry. And you can also tell that this is weighing on Kenny too. Yeah. That when he comes in, you can see that he's just basically like, I'm present. I'm here. I'm not entertaining anything else. I'm just here to do my job. Like he doesn't even seem like he cares about Adam Page anymore. I think he just cares about like, I am going to show up and I'm going to do my job because that is my job. And then Adam Page is just fully giving into his emotions. It's like he doesn't even care that Kenny's there. He just wants to fight FTR. This is what struck me about this match. I don't know if you felt this way, Samee. Kenny Omega and Adam Page, incredible wrestlers. FTR is an incredible team. And you can really see that on display between like the contrasting styles, where it's like not taking anything away from the skills of Kenny Omega and Adam Page, obviously, but it's like when you're in a tag team match, you have to have a different skill set. There's like just a different amount of trust and teamwork that goes into a tag team match that FTR so clearly has over these two. It's like not even fair to a certain point.
Yeah, absolutely. I do love the ham-fisted / not ham-fisted way of storytelling within the match, where the match itself is proving Hangman's, you know, ongoing nightmare that he and Kenny are really not a team. Because, you know, with tag teams and stuff, especially with AEW at this point, they were really leaning into the art of tag teams, right? And FTR is no exception. And there are moments where Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega like sync up, but they are I don't know, they're fleeting moments.
Yeah, every time you see them on the same page, you're like, this is why these guys are the champs. Like, they are really good. But I honestly felt like we were watching we watched two matches. We watched Hangman Adam Page versus FTR, and then we watched Kenny Omega versus FTR. And so it was largely just watching two very skilled, very accomplished singles wrestlers wrestle like a team that almost feels like they can psychically communicate with each other. Like they're that in sync with where they need to be and what they need to do and anticipating their partner's needs that, it's like, you're basically fighting two people who can operate as one. And then these guys are so disconnected. They're more or less like, well, let's just take turns fighting them both individually. And everything just really falls apart when Kenny and Adam Page go for their double finisher. And one of FTR, I think it was Cash, ducks out of the way. And then Kenny accidentally takes out Adam Page with a V trigger. So he just like kicks him right in the face. He goes down. And then FTR is able to hit their finisher on Adam Page twice. And they pick up those tag team titles. And then to add a little bit of insult to injury, FTR cracks a couple of celebratory beers and then leaves them right next to Adam Page's like passed out body. And then they just like dip out with the titles, like mission accomplished. They came in and accomplished everything they set out to do. Fuck with the Young Bucks by like ruining a friendship and then taking the tag titles before the Young Bucks were able to do it. So they were basically like, they just used Adam Page. And to make matters worse, this is the anniversary of his huge loss at All Out last year.
Jericho.
And so,
oh my God.
And so you could just like, it's just like the anger and the shame that Adam Page is experiencing the ring when he's processing this loss is heartbreaking. And to make matters worse, Kenny Omega has fully had it. I think the thing that was keeping him next to Adam Page, who was so unreliable and so reckless, was the fact that it's like, we are the champions together. And as soon as that goes away, you can see Kenny be like, I hate this guy. Like all of the anger is able to come out. All of the resentment comes out. And so you can see Kenny, he's just like throwing stuff on ringside. He's so mad. He like pulls something off of the barricade. It's like a half
TV
table TV tray thing or something.
Yeah.
And you can see him, he's like holding it and he's like looking at Adam Page and he just wants to lay him the fuck out. He's so mad. And you can see him thinks better of it. He throws it on the ground. And then you see Adam Page like stumbling. He's so hurt. He's so fucked up. He just wants to like collapse into his teammate. And he goes to fall. And then you just see Kenny step out of the way. And Adam Page hits the ground. And then you just see Kenny like look at his passed out body and then be like, fuck this. And he leaves. Brutal, dude.
Yeah, this was really heartbreaking. Cause like, in their whole entire career as a tag team, Hangman has been pretty cold towards Kenny and like, buddy moments. Like there's one time early on in their tag team career where, Kenny's excited about a move they made or they were just in sync so well that Kenny just wanted to high five and he was left hanging. And in this match, because Hangman is so desperate to hang on to Kenny, his last friend, and he gets hyped up and he's like, oh yeah, we were in sync, let's do a high five. And you can see Kenny hesitate and lets him hang out for a while before giving him this high five. And I just feel like that last moment where Hangman tries to fall into his buddy's arms and he is let to hit the mat, it was just devastating, but it's also like, where was he the whole time? Like where was Hangman the whole time?
Truly that move of seeing Kenny just the theater of stepping out of the way and letting Adam Page fall. That's one of those things where you're like, this is why I love this shit, man. Like, this is unreal. Like,
it is
the soap opera, the operatic.
It's so good. The theater of this match is so beautiful. Like even when the match was happening, we can see. Well, at the end, where FTR is hitting Hangman with their finisher twice, you can see Kenny kind of struggle, but like halfway struggle to get any sort of interference in. And this match is really good.
Really good. Brutal. And that's what I mean, where it's like this year was just like banger after banger after banger, like so many banger matches that we have to leave a bunch on. Like, all right, we just got to keep it trucking. So, like, as we said, now Adam Page is like lost because he's lost everything. He's lost all of his friends, all of his allies, and he's truly got nothing left. Oh, okay. So I think at this point you see something change in Kenny, where he's basically like, I'm done being a loser. Like, I'm done being a tag team. I'm done being a loser. Like, it's time to get back to what I do best, which is being the best wrestler of all time. And it like really lights a fire inside of Kenny Omega, but not a like good fire. You know
not
what I mean?
a
It seems like,
respectable fire.
yeah, it seems like there's
a noble fire.
It's lit the fire of evil inside of him. And so he's like, I'm going to get back to what I do best. And it is sort of like, well, what he used to do best was be the cleaner who was a prick. And so I think he's just like, I need to be who I used to be. And who I used to be was a bad guy. So like, let's embrace the darkness. And so I think Kenny, he had been keeping all of that anger and all that self-loathing inside of him. And he's like, yeah, fuck it. I'm going to the dark side. And he does. And he basically is like, young bucks, come with me. And they hesitate. And you can see there's a moment where it's just is a little bit complex, where it's like they've had so much struggle with Hangman that even when Kenny's like, I've turned my back on him, he's done. You can see that they're like, we can't fully go with you at this moment. And you can see that it just makes it feel so weird and so complicated. Kenny has like fully embraced like being who he used to be, like really getting back to basics. And he enters into this like tournament to determine who will be able to challenge for the AEW championship. And so like, guess who else gets in this tournament? Hangman Adam Page. And we go to Full Gear November 7th, 2020. We get to the finals of the tournament. It is Kenny Omega versus Hangman Adam Page. Kenny Omega wins and becomes the number one contender. So it's like whatever they had for each other, it's gone. Kenny doesn't care anymore. Is fully willing to punish him. And then also notable on this event, the Young Bucks defeat FTR and win the AEW tag team titles. So now that Kenny Omega is the number one contender, we move to December 2nd, 2020, an event called Winter is Coming, where Kenny Omega defeats Jon Moxley to become the AEW World Champion. And this is why this is significant. All three members of the Elite are holding the top titles in All Elite Wrestling, and Hangman Adam Page has nothing. He has no friends, no title. Like the fear deep within himself that he's not good enough is fulfilled. Like he
fully on display.
Fully on display. He's like, what consumed me is I didn't think I could keep up with these guys. And I was right. I completely imploded.
Oh,
I could not show up when I needed to. I lost my friends, and my friends are succeeding without me. That's brutal, dude. Like that's just brutal.
This is some, I don't know, like world championship title belt fucking long form storytelling right here. This is great.
Yeah, I know it is. I know it is one of those things where it's just like like you said, the drama and the theater of it, where it's just like, as wrestling fan, I mean, certainly me as a wrestling fan, I live for this shit. We love the drama. You know what I mean? It's like, it's got all the drama of plays and reality TV and all that stuff. And it's just like,
it's so good.
But again, it's like a wrestler. He's sad that his friends are succeeding without him. Like, that's insane. Like, what a great, that's beautiful. I don't know. I just think it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it was just so good. They even had, when Hangman was friends with FTR or whatever, there is a backstage video clip of when FTR was starting to turn on Hangman. They cut to Hangman at a bar and they're interviewing him for something, and then it just slow pans and it zooms out and you see that Hangman had glasses ready for FTR and they never showed up. It's good, dude. It's good.
Yeah, it's just that relatable thing of just like, we've all been in places in our life where you wanted somebody to like you and they just don't. You know what I mean? Like friendship, romantic, like whatever. And it was just being like, he was so excited to have new friends and they literally betrayed him and did the worst thing possible. And that is such like a human emotion. It's great.
I mean, we haven't really talked about this yet, but Hangman is incredibly over with the fans and the audience, and so all of this storytelling and showing that he is incredibly relatable and also a loser just helps the fact that he's an incredible babyface. Like, I just feel like in wrestling specifically, babyface, I mean, I don't know if babyfaces exist elsewhere, but babyfaces have to be losers, I think. We just covered Bayley. Babyface was a loser. And, our episode on John Cena, I fully turned on him because he never lost. Like, it's just, I think babyfaces, they have to struggle. They have to be relatable in that way.
I think I agree with you that is a key component to what makes somebody a really good babyface, is because I do think Adam Page, like, maybe we haven't had the exact same struggles that his characters had, but I do think during this story, we've all struggled with that stuff of just like feeling like you're not good enough, being like haunted by a mistake. We've all had like friendships fall apart. We've all just, like all of these things, like we've had people, been used by, like by friends by like popular kids, like all of that stuff. And it really just feels relatable. And then you just put all that on top of a guy who is an incredible wrestler too. Yeah, it really, like, it makes you want to see him succeed. And so even though this guy has been walking under a storm cloud for the better part of a year, people are cheering for him. They want him to succeed. They want him to get his shit together. And what makes it so heartbreaking is he just can't. He just seems like he cannot get his shit together when he needs to, which again, I also think is relatable, of just having that feeling of, I don't want to be here either. And you know what I mean? Like, that's so human and that's so relatable. And I think that's what makes this story so touching and so incredible.
It's incredibly compelling, yeah.
I'm going to gloss over this next part because it's so expansive that I think it deserves its own episode. But there's like a year between. So we're going to kind of do a time jump of a year, right? So everything falls apart in November at Full Gear when Kenny Omega beats Hangman Adam Page. And so in this intervening year, Kenny Omega goes on this run where he gets dubbed the Belt Collector. And what that means is everywhere he goes, he wins a title. So he wins the AEW Heavyweight Championship. He goes over to a different company, AAA Wrestling, and becomes the Mega Champion. Then he goes over to TNA, where he becomes the Impact Wrestling, the Impact Champion too. So he's like holding all of these top titles from companies that aren't even AEW. So it's like he's not under contract with TNA. He just went over there and won the belt and was the champion and defended the belt too.
And it was
unreal, like unbelievable. And Kenny Omega at this stage of time was a monster. And so he fully embraced, like, he turned into Darth Vader. He like fully embraced the dark side. He was running with his old mentor, Don Callis, who would help him cheat. Over in TNA, he was mixing it up with some of his old Bullet Club buddies. And they kind of reformed a new, weird Frankenstein version of the old school Bullet Club, but they weren't called that. And so it's like they all were like helping Kenny cheat, and they were just being like bullies and thugs backstage. And then like meanwhile, Adam Page had like slowly been working himself. I think when at Full Gear 2020, he hits rock bottom. And I think you see him slowly start to, like, after he's lost everything, starts to get his life together. He starts like kind of an uneasy friendship alliance with this group called the Dark Order, where he like doesn't fully trust them, because I think he's just been burned by trusting people like the Elite, trusting FTR. And so I think he's really reluctant, but the Dark Order seems to want to have his back and want him to be a part of it. And so I feel like doing all this really helps Adam Page like exercise the demons, like whatever was haunting him about All In 2019. We get to October 6th, 2021, an episode of AEW Dynamite. They have a special match called the Casino Ladder Match. And so I think you've heard us talk about like the concept of Money in the Bank before. So Money in the Bank is a WWE creation where it's a ladder match. You climb the ladder, you grab a briefcase, and the briefcase allows you to be able to cash in your contract for any title you want at any time you want. And so the Casino Ladder Match is a very similar thing. So you climb the ladder, you grab a poker chip at the top of the ladder, and that allows you to be able to like earn a future AEW World Championship at a place and time of your choosing. The match is Pac versus Orange Cassidy versus Lance Archer versus Jon Moxley versus Andrade El Idolo versus Matt Hardy, and then a surprise entrant, Adam Page, joins the casino ladder match.
Wow.
Samee, how'd you find this match?
We love ladder matches so much, and this does not stray. This does not make me hate ladder matches at all. All of these wrestlers are super, super fun. The only wrestler that I'm unfamiliar with at this point, well, two of them actually, are Pac and Lance Archer. I just want to highlight a couple of moments here. So Lance Archer picks up, he's a bigger dude, and so I feel like he's also in the singlet, so we're just led to believe that he is a very strong man. And so he's doing strong man stuff. He picks up a ladder horizontally, and I think he's about to helicopter it. But Orange Cassidy, the guy who doesn't care, flies in with a punch. It kind of stuns Lance, right? So he kind of like sinks into the ladder. It's kind of like, Winnie the Pooh when he gets stuck in the hole, right?
Yeah, yes.
Except it's a fucking ladder, and it's so his body is in it, but the ladder is sticking straight up, and we see Orange Cassidy have an idea. And the idea is to use Lance's ladder as the ladder to get the fucking poker chip, and it is so close. He is so close to actually achieving this, except Jon Moxley ruins it and tosses Orange off, which,
And then you just wish the camera would like pan over to Lance Archer and he's just like, no bother.
Oh, bother. So the Joker is this wild card entrance to the casino ladder match, and it is Adam Page, as you mentioned. We can kind of tell like he's on his redemption arc, right? Because in the lower third, we see that the graphics team has finally given him a little bit of slack. And it says, Hangman Adam Page finally showed up to work. Which I know seems sarcastic, but I feel like in the spirit of the match, in the spirit of his return, this was actually them just being really happy to see him back, because he was gone for a long time. In true ladder match fashion, all of these guys are giving it their all, but there's only one winner, and it turns out it's Hangman Adam Page. He reaches up and grabs that poker chip, and I hope that they change the design of this, because the anticipation of the match is kind of ruined by Hangman trying to like unhook the actual giant poker chip off of the little hook.
It's just a weird, clunky design. I don't know. It is a very strange. It is always such a bummer when you're watching a ladder match.
Mm-hmm.
For, Money in the Bank does it too, or like when they've got the tag titles above the ring and you just watch somebody and they very clearly are struggling to just be like,
I mean, much like R-Truth struggled at WrestleMania 40, which we went to live.
We went live, baby.
Once he was up there, I was like, oh, is he actually going to be able to do that? And he does.
Yeah, when we saw it live, he struggled but overcame, much like Adam Page does when he gets
when he gets that damn giant poker chip. And it's time now to challenge Kenny Omega for the World Championship.
He challenges Kenny Omega to a match for the AEW World Championship at Full Gear, which is a full year from the last time they locked up. So the last time they were so when Kenny Omega beat Adam Page to become the number one contender, it was at Full Gear. So here we are a year later at Full Gear again. It is Adam Page is now challenging the champion, Kenny Omega. So they're running back their rivalry from 1 year ago. You can just totally tell from the promo packages, from the interviews, that this is a renewed Adam Page. And so he's just coming in focused, ready to go. It was like a night and day difference if you watched him lose the AEW tag titles with Kenny Omega versus the Adam Page who's walking in at Full Gear 2021. It like truly was a weight off my chest of being like, oh, cool, okay. See, he seems focused. He seems ready. I don't think he's going to self-destruct like he always says, because that's kind of what Kenny says.
Yeah, you can't win at the big ones.
Yeah, he's like, like he's a good wrestler, except for when it counts.
That fucking blows, dude. That is so hard. And so hard to hear from an ex like partner too. Like, oh yeah, you're good, but not when it matters. Like, oh geez.
Yeah, it is truly like the people who could hurt you the most are the people who were the closest to you. Where it's like, oh yeah, you know that Kenny knows every insecurity that Adam Page had. You know, he just knows exactly how to hurt him, and he does expertly, I would say.
One thing we did mention earlier is that when Hangman teams with Kenny Omega, he goes from trunks to pants, much to my chagrin. And this full gear match is no different. He does show up in pants. I was hoping for trunks, but we got pants.
I'll be honest with you, dude. The pants we got, incredible design. They've got like golden horseshoes and roses embroidered on the side,
And
golden fringe on his chaps. And so I know you like the trunks, but
I love knees.
You could do worse pants, and I thought these were pretty incredible pants.
Well, here's what's funny is that, you know, he has fringe on these pants, and the Young Bucks do too, but every time I see their fringe, it's cringe fringe, and I feel like the fringe on Hangman, like I can really get behind these pants for sure.
Yeah, this is adult grown man fringe, not the childish fringe of the Young Bucks.
100%. And again, we see the graphics team give Hangman some slack. It says, quote unquote, "We're proud of you," from the graphics team above his name, which is just lovely. And I really do love this, 180-degree turn on their relationship. Kenny, on the other hand, as you mentioned, has turned into a real piece of shit. He's wearing sunglasses inside. He's got the mutton chops, the Triple H mutton chops, which I thought for a second that it was also a nod to the Omega shape because it goes up and around, but not downtown.
I mean, you could be 100% right. I
think we both are.
It just feels good for us to both be right for different reasons, and I love that.
100%. And I do feel like Kenny has a darker dye job on his hair. Like we've seen him with the ombre, we've seen him with the straight up blonde and brown, but I think he's dyed his hair black even.
Yeah.
Oof, what a bad dude.
And he also comes out with like a half cape on.
Oh, I fucking love that shit. I feel like it's like a one-winged angel, but like the bitchy version.
Yeah, he's just got like a bitchy silver cape draped over one shoulder. I thought it looked incredible. It was one of those things where it's like, I don't always love Kenny Omega's gear, but
sure,
him coming out in this full pop star look with the silver cape, I was like, I love this. I think this is great. With the dyed Omega mutton chops.
Fucking stupid ass.
You're like, this guy's out of control. This guy's gone insane. And you could just tell by how he's dressing and acting.
And it doesn't stop with just his dressing. So during the match, he's being very, very heely. And, even when we were watching matches when he was the cleaner, it didn't seem that he played this dirty. So he thumbed Hangman's eyes at one point, just straight up put a thumb in his eyes. He's grating. He's just he's grating Hangman's face across the stairs. It's very, very obvious that Kenny is a real bad dude during this.
It really feels like Kenny is kind of punishing Adam Page throughout this whole thing, where
100.
Not only is he a bad guy and he's been wrestling like a bad guy, but it really does feel like there's an extra degree of, you hurt me. and so there's like an anger and a disappointment in a lot of Kenny's offense, I felt.
Yeah, it's kind of like you did this to us both.
It felt like a physical representation of grabbing coffee with an ex to catch up, where you're just sort of like, this is so fraught and we both know each other too well and everything feels like a weird veiled shot or something. And so you're just sort of like, man, this is awkward. And I feel like this is just the physical representation of that, of just being like, you were such a piece of shit to me. Like, I fucking apologized already, or whatever.
Hangman and Kenny are doing the absolute most to destroy the other man. And Kenny does this one move that they called the springboard Liger bomb. And I don't have the vocabulary to describe it. And I want to show you, Michael, which move I'm talking about. And I feel like I'm going to link this in the episode description because it is just so fucking nasty.
Like we said, the reason they were such a good tag team is because they're just so good individual wrestlers. But this also has a certain element of the physical prowess on display here. This is such amazing timing and choreography where what we're seeing basically, Hangman is getting up on the ropes, trying to get his footing, and then Kenny leapfrogs onto the top rope and then parlays that into a backflip where he then slams Adam Page on the ground. It is truly
is insane.
It acrobatic and wild and crazy. And again, done with that reckless Kenny Omega charm where he's not even looking at his footing. He just goes for it.
Things really go pedal to the metal with 2 near falls after Kenny hits a series of snapdragon suplexes, 2 of which happen in the ring, 1 of which happens on the apron, and then a V-trigger. And so he's setting up for the one-winged angel,
which is his finisher.
Right. So all of the snapdragon, the V-trigger, and the one-winged angel are all Kenny's like super moves, his special moves or whatever. Hangman scouts it. He rolls Kenny up, but he kicks out too. There's another move that I got the name of but can't describe it. So Hangman does a release German suplex, which looks exactly like the Snapdragon suplex, but just a little bit higher, maybe. He sets up a Deadeye, which we mentioned earlier is just this is the butt tombstone, but Kenny counters with a Tiger Driver 98. And I'll probably link a link in the episode description, but it is such a ridiculous, delicious, like savage move that I just want everybody to know what that's called. It's getting out of control. It's reaching a fever pitch, and Kenny Omega, our beloved hero, has fallen so hard into heeliness that he starts biting Hangman Adam Page's head wound. And I just want to ask you right now, Michael, how long would it take, or what would it take for you to bite someone's head during a fight?
I think I'd have to have some kind of personal history with them.
Oh, yeah?
If I was going to... Yeah, it would take at least that. So if I was fighting somebody I don't think I could ever fight a stranger and be so mad I would bite them in the head. That would truly only be like, this is the end of a blood feud.
This is a blood feud. I need to bite your face.
Yeah, this is like me and my brother having a blood feud. Like, it would have to be that, of just being like, me and my brother have found ourselves on the other side of a literal war. Then and only then, I'm like, look, we're fighting on opposite sides. But I also know that he's a pretty clean dude. I don't think he's going to have any bloodborne illnesses. I feel so I hate him, but feel safe enough to bite him in the head. You know what I mean? So there's got to be an element of love and hate. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
Just the right ingredient for a poetic bite to the head. I wouldn't do it to a stranger. I wouldn't even do it to an enemy. It would have to be
just someone you love and hate at the same time.
Exactly. Somebody I feel complicated about.
Kenny is outside of the ring. He's crumpled. His body's out there. Hangman removes a camera from a ring post, and he jumps towards Kenny and administers the heaviest, most brutal flying lariat that I have ever seen. And Kenny, I think, is dead at this point, and Hangman wastes no time in dragging Kenny back into the ring. Kenny is so beaten down at this point that even though Hangman has kind of stood him up and he's setting up for a buckshot lariat, Kenny crumbles immediately. And so Hangman can't even do his finishing move on him. And so instead, Hangman finds the opportunity to do a V-trigger on Kenny Omega. And so while he's winding up to do this, we see him nearly miss because Kenny gets out of the way and he suplexes Hangman. But Hangman somehow lands on his feet. He gets so much air in this powerbomb that they call it a pop-up powerbomb. And he goes for a buckshot lariat one more time, but Kenny drags the referee, Paul Turner, into his path. And I wanted to highlight that from the camera, from removing the camera and dragging Paul into the path of the buckshot lariat, it all happened so quickly that it may have been like 11 seconds. And this is just like how ridiculous, like just how passionately these guys are fighting and how quick of a pace that they both wrestle with. It's just Such a delight to watch.
And they're hitting each other with such a complex series of moves that for us to break down what they did takes 10 times longer than them to actually just do it. Like, we're talking about the cream of the crop here. Like, that's how good these wrestlers are.
It is out of control. So the referee is knocked out. Don Callis is somehow in the ring.
Because he sneaks in with the title belt. So he's going to hit Adam Page and allow Kenny to get a cheeky victory. But as soon as he slithers into the ring with the title, Adam Page turns around and...
he punches him right in the fucking face.
He punches him in the fucking face.
But because Don Callis is so good at his job and his job is distracting, that Kenny gets an opportunity to pick up the belt. And now it's his turn to try and knock Hangman Adam Page out. Hangman finally gets to Deadeye Kenny, and while he pins him, we see Ref Aubrey sprint into the ring, and this moment gave me a lot of anxiety, because I'm like, oh no, there's a possibility that Aubrey could Titus O'Neil and end up under the ring, but she doesn't. Thankfully for us, for her, for AEW, whatever.
I just want to highlight here, though, like, I think you're right. There is an opportunity where, hits the dead eye on Kenny Omega, and then there's this element of he's hit a finisher, but there's no referee in the ring. And then, like an angel from heaven, referee Aubrey Edwards just like runs at top speed. And I want to highlight her specifically because as a referee, I feel like she does the most in a way that I personally love. Like, she's so extra with how she referees that, like, when you really are trying to take something to the next level, just have her like dramatically running from the back like as fast as she can. And you're right, like, there's an element, she could trip, she could fall, she could slide into the ring, but she just like dives into the ring and does this like dramatic like 1 and 2, and then Kenny Omega kicks out, and then she goes like,
can't believe
2
it.
Like, really, she adds to the theater of it too, because she's so fucking dramatic as a referee in a way that I love, where you're just like, you are doing too much, and I fucking love it, dude. Like, I love it the most.
I love it the most as well. So there's only a couple more points that I'd like to touch just because they made me gasp. Hangman headbutts Kenny so hard that there's a crack sound that we hear. And I really thought that somebody cracked a little bit of skull. And in the sequences after, Kenny looks a little bit extra stunned. And, we love Kenny and how he can sell like anything so well. But for a little moment, I was like, are you actually stunned? Is this going to be okay? Are you going to be okay? After all that nonsense, the Young Bucks enter the arena and approach the ring. And Kenny tries once again to one-winged angel Adam, but he gets out of it, and he one-winged angels Kenny. And so Kenny kicks out, unfortunately, because I think Kenny is the only one that has ever...
Which normally when Kenny Omega, like, they set up his finisher as very strong. So sometimes, like, and I think AEW had this problem where there's so much like dramatic twists and turns that someone would have to hit like 2 or 3 of their finishers in a row to be able to like adequately beat somebody. But like Kenny Omega's one wing angel was always so strong that if he hits it one time, it's lights out. And so I think it was all just to kind of be like, yeah, you hit his move on him, but you can't do it like Kenny does it. So he's going to be strong enough to kick out of his own finisher. And also, I just think the consummate bitchy showman that is Kenny Omega is like, me lose to my own move? How dare you?
Yeah, I think he kicks out at 1. Like,
yeah,
he's being so bitchy about it. So he kicks out, but he's still down. Hangman sets up for another buckshot, and he has a stare down with each of the Young Bucks on different ends of the ring. So he has a stare down with one Young Buck. He turns around. He does a buckshot lariat to the back of Kenny's head. Then he's setting up for another one, and the other Young Buck comes around, and it's Matt this time. So
Nick on one side, Matt on the other.
So we see this stare down between Adam and Matt, and we see a little bit of like nodding from Matt. He's like, yeah, go ahead, do your thing. Hangman buckshot lariats Kenny for the motherfucking championship title.
It is 2021. This has been plaguing him since 2019. He has been haunted by his loss of the AEW title in 2019, and it took him till November 2021 to finally be able to, like, in his own eyes, redeem himself, become the person that he needed to be to, like, overcome all his bullshit, all his insecurity, all his anxiety, overcome his old friends, you know, like he has now surpassed the people that he felt that he was beneath. I think you just see on Matt Jackson's face that he's got like an element of, there's just so much baggage where he's like, I'm proud of you, but I got to keep my distance. And so like, there's just like a moment where it, like, pans to him and he's just like, he did it. And there's just that complicated tinge of regret of being like, man, this is my friend. We really had a lot of history together, but I know that that ship has sailed and we got to just go our own separate ways. But here I am privately giving you your prop, you know, privately, publicly giving you your props and stepping out of the way. They leave, they take Kenny out. They drag him out of there. And then the Dark Order, this sort of newfound friend, newfound alliance, they come out to the ring and they celebrate with Hangman Adam Page. They lift him up on their shoulders and he's got the belt. And you could just see how happy he is to finally be the person we all knew he could be, the person we've been rooting for 2 years. He finally got the belt. And just as an epilogue, Adam Page holds on to the AEW heavyweight title for about 197 days until we get to the event Double or Nothing, where he loses the title to CM Punk. And that is when all the trouble starts. But Samee, that's a story for a different day.
Thank goodness. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
I think for me, it just we accomplished exactly what I wanted to set out to do. Like, I just felt like the portrayal and the coverage of everything that's been going on with AEW. Like, I understand there's a lot of justifiable criticism, and there was a really like dark cloud hanging over that promotion for so long, and it was just like tough to enjoy it. It was tough to be a fan, and I really wanted to dig into a time when I felt really happy and positive, and I just wanted to like watch a good story from AEW just so we could celebrate it a little bit, of just being like, yeah, we were really happy. There was a point when we loved it, and just to sort of examine what they did that I liked, what they did better than other places at that time. And I think what they did that I liked is something they can absolutely get back to and absolutely do it. And I've been hearing and seeing that I think they're starting to like hopefully get back on track with this kind of thing. All it is cool characters that I like being in cool matches that kick ass. And I think AEW is more than capable of making those two little changes of just being like characters that I like in matches that I think are cool. And I think that's
they have the roster for it, for sure.
They got the roster for it, and I think they could just start pumping it back out. So I really feel like we can get this AEW again, and I just hope that it happens sooner than later. How'd you feel, Samee? What are your takeaways?
I was just so happy to watch this type of wrestling again. It just feels different, right, than what we've been watching lately. Not better, just different. And I really missed watching Kenny. I think Kenny is such a great wrestler, and to know that Hangman Adam Page was also an incredible wrestler and stood toe to toe with Kenny very well is just really exciting, and I'm happy to have delved into another wrestler just to, add to the list of wrestlers that we love. And after the John Cena episode, I felt really, really complicated about the babyface label and stuff. And, this is, bringing me back towards feeling like babyfaces are good and cool. For a while until we hit Bayley, I was like, I hate every single babyface.
I agree with you. I do think it's a hard thing to nail, because I think if your babyface is too nice and it's too saccharine, that's not relatable either. If your babyface is just like a loser who loses all the time, well, that's not fun to watch. And so it really is, it's you're walking a tightrope of relatable struggle, believable talent, and then executing of when they overcome at just the right time. And I feel like in this particular story, this particular instance with Hangman Adam Page, I feel like they nailed it, and it felt really good.
One other thing before we cut it, the tantrum that Kenny had after he and Adam lost against FTR, where he is immediately storming through the stadium to the outside, just gave me so much appreciation for all that Kenny does, because he just got his ass kicked up and down the fucking ring, and then he still has to go and cut a promo at the end.
He did 30 minutes of cardio and then had to do a scene, an acting
He had
scene.
to do a scene. It was so wild. And like, obviously he's not doing an Oscar-worthy performance, and he's not, doing a giant monologue. But the fact that he still had to do that, it was so funny. And I looked at the contrast of his skin to the Young Bucks, because just like the blood flow, the impacts, all that stuff, he's just fucking bright red, while the Young Bucks are like, oh, Kenny, don't.
Yeah, sweating with hand marks all over him. He's fully out of breath, being like, I'm sick of Adam Page. We're not friends anymore. And you're just like, oh my God. Like, so he's got like anger, and he's also just like, for real, just gotten brutalized for 40 minutes and then has to deliver lines. Unbelievable.
He's out of control, and I think that he's set to make an appearance at an upcoming AEW event. So Kenny, we love you. We hope you're doing better, but don't return before you're ready.
So that was our AEW Hangman Adam Page episode, and we just want to thank you for listening to Wrestling Academy, which is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Michael Classic, and you, Samee Junio. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Wrestling Academy Pod. You can send us an email at wrestlingacademypod@gmail.com.
Follow, rate, and leave a positive review wherever you get your podcast, but check out Spotify, where we have Q&As or polls for every episode. And please, if you have any information on Ween Kid, go to our website, wrestlingacademy.university, to send in an anonymous tip, or call the Ween Kid tip line and leave us a voicemail at 708-669-4512. Class is dismissed.